So welcome to this session titled The Human Factor, Unlocking Project Success Through Change Management, which is presented by Josy Jamieson. This session is hosted by the Project Management Association of Canada and sponsored by IPMA USA, Procept Associates, and Title Shift. We will post links to our sponsor's website in the chat window. During the live presentation, feel free to type any questions you have into the Q&A panel on the web interface. After the formal portion of the presentation, we'll read out your questions for the speaker to answer. This presentation is also being recorded and will be posted later on YouTube for those who could not attend today. Now let's get started. Josy has been passionate about change and transformation for her 20-plus year career. She brings her skill sets as an executive coach, managing consultant, and project manager to over 60 projects that have affected over 75,000 end users. Take it away, Josy.
Thank you so much, Alana, and thank you for that great intro. And in fact, you did such a great job that I'm just going to go right past this slide and just talk a bit that I am here representing ProSci Canada. ProSci Canada, as many of you have heard of us before, we are a change management company, and we're actually a global change management company. So ProSci Canada fits into the global ProSci. We are best known for the ADKAR model. So on the right side of your screen, you'll see that we're best known for the ADKAR model. Again, we've got 25 years of proprietary research and change management. We also certify folks in change management. We've got over 150,000 people certified in the model, and we are training on change management every single day. Now, why I tell you that is because this is not what I have found to be best practices. I'm really speaking and representing ProSci best practice as we walk through this session today. And throughout the session, I've also brought some best practice or some research slides with me. And I'm going to start out with one. And so here in our research, I brought in some of the things when we think about integrating with project management. So I know there's a lot on this slide, but let's take it column by column. So if we start over on the left side, that is our top contributors to change success. And you'll see that number one is sponsorship. We have found that active and visible sponsorship throughout the life cycle of the project really is the greatest contributor to project success. We also know that a structured approach to change management is equally as important. So long gone are the days that we're trying to do change off the side of the desk or comms off the side of the desk on a project. Really having a structured, intentional approach really moves the project forward. Employee engagement. We got a saying at ProSci, don't do change to me, do change with me. So ensuring that there are some employee or end user engagement. There's still a need for communication, but really good communication that's targeted and that is sent out by the right sender of the message. But number 5 is integration with project management. We know that project management and change management cannot be siloed activities. They support each other and need to be integrated. So as a takeaway today, it's thinking about how might you start to integrate project management with your change management. 6 is dedicated funding and resources. And then 7, another one of what are people aspects of getting middle management or people leaders involved in the change. Really, really important to creating successful change. In the middle column, there are, in the last 2 years, what were the internal trends? If you hop down to number 4, again, it's a shout out to improved integration with project management. And as we were going through our research in the last few years, that just kept coming up as a key point, that project management and change management needed to come closer together. Their work needed to come closer together. And if we project out to the next 5 years, number 7 on that list is increased integration with project management. So project managers, it's not, you can't get rid of change management. In fact, we're coming closer together and our work is even more intertwined. Let's take another look at a research side. So in this one, we asked a number of respondents to self-assess how effective was their change management. If you look at the bottom of the slide, you'll see that it ranges from poor, fair, good to excellent. And then we asked them how often or how many times did they meet or exceed their project objectives and correlated between the two. And what we found was that for those that self-identified as doing excellent change management, 88% of the time they were meeting or exceeding their objectives. On the flip side, those that said they were doing poor change management, they were meeting or exceeding their objectives only 13% of the time. So that's where you're getting that 7 times, our research finds that is 7 times more likely that you will meet or exceed objectives if you are having a really efficient change management. But you don't, let's take a look at poor change management. That might be something where an email comes out on Monday. You go that something's going live later on the week. You go to training on Tuesday, and then by Thursday you've gone live. That might be an example of poor change management. But anything that you do to help improve is going to help increase the likelihood of project success. So if you're doing, I see a lot of companies that are doing what I refer to as organic change. It's got some good elements of communications in it. They've got training in it. It might be what we denote as fair. If you're moving from fair to good change management, where now you're getting a little bit more structured and intentional in how you're doing it, you are 3 times more likely to meet or exceed your objectives. And that's really key. So I always encourage people to take what you can. There's always something you can do starting at whenever you see this recording to be able to take what you do on your change management work stream and just bump it up a notch, because it really pays dividends when you are trying to measure outcomes later on. So that when we think about integrating project management and change management, think of it like this zipper. See how it zips up together. They are nicely met, and there's this connection between the two of them. And that's what we're going to explore over this next little while. First of all, let's talk about the 3 states of change. So often we think about an organization going from their current state through a transition state to the future state. We often think about the organization, but really it's about the individuals in the organization, about helping them move through their current, through to their transition, through to their future state. And the importance of making sure that they are supported and equipped, because if they are not, what we find is that people kind of just fade away. So what does that mean? That means that maybe they are disengaged. Maybe that represents the brewing of resistance. Sometimes people vote with their feet and they leave the organization. So where you thought you were going to have all of those folks in current state move over to transition and get to the future state, what we find is that they all don't make it. And when they don't, that shows up in lower expectation of improvement, lower ROI. And if you're in a place where there's a number of projects that are going through something similar, there's this effect now that the organizational culture shifts a bit, and the organization themselves say, well, wait a moment, what's happened? We don't even recognize who we are anymore. That's why one project is so important, as important as to the portfolios of projects or enterprise change management. It's all about how are you moving people through their current transition and future state. Let's stay in that space for a bit, and let's go down one layer. So when we look at this current transition future state, let's start over on the left side of the screen. There's always a reason. There's a reason why we're doing this change. Some might call it the why. We move people through their 3 states of change, and the hope is over, as we see on the right-hand side of the screen, that there is some level of success. Now, if we were to take those 3 states of change, and where all the activity is happening, and if we look at it on one side as representative of the technical change, or the technical side, which is to design, develop, and deliver. And then on the other side is the people side, and that job is to engage, adopt, and use. So on the technical side, and we don't mean technology, but we mean technical. So it could be a restructure, an org restructure. It could be the implementation of a platform. It could be digital modernization. Whatever is the thing that is being put into the organization. And that is traditionally what we see as the project management side. And on the people side, we see that as the change management side. The key is, can you get them synced together at the same time so that you can collect all of that defined success that you were hoping for? And how we start to think about that, how we start to think about the people side and to be able to adopt, we realize adoption doesn't just happen at the flick of a switch, that there is more to it than that. It is the setup for how we actually get people through embracing, adopting, and using the change that needs to happen. So to bring it back into terminology that we all are very familiar with, from process, people, and tools, let's see if we can add some change management elements to how we think about process, people, and tools. One of the first things that let's take a look at process. And from that process is the integration of project management and change management. Now, I'm being very specific because I'm talking about the discipline and not the person, not the project manager or the change manager, but the importance of integrating the two disciplines. And there are often people will say to me, Josie, when should we start doing our change management? And I always say as early as possible. There's a lot to do, especially if you're on one of these complex projects. There's a lot to get straightened out before you send out any kind of messaging to an end user. There's a need to do an integrated plan, to align timelines, to ensure that different activities are sequenced in the right way, and that you are defining what deliverables need to be done. Change management, when you come behind the scenes and do it from a structured perspective, is very structured. It's very structured. It's very rigored with a number of tools. We do a lot of assessing so that we're not just putting in plans, but we're putting in plans that have meaning, that have purpose, that are there to make sure that we are going for a direct line to whatever the goals or the ROI or the objectives are. Sometimes when we don't have the luxury of coming in early, and we at the bottom of the screen you see that late entry, we still have to do some level of assessment. We still have to do a number of things. It just means that we do it later, and we can't do it as well as if we had the time above. So to project managers, I always recommend start your change activities early, so that it can help support what the objectives of the project are. Another model I'd like to share with you is, of course, the ADKAR model. And as we think about current, transition, future state, the ADKAR is how an individual goes through change, how they move through from their current state through to transition to future state. And this again has been, this is research, this has been tested many times, and it has proven to be true globally. First, that someone needs an awareness of the need to change. This is where the why comes from. As you see on the right side of the screen, why? Why are we doing it? What's the nature of the change? Why now? And what if we don't do it? Next is desire. A person will need the desire to participate. Now, desire is interesting because it's not necessarily desire for the change itself. It is desire to participate and support the change. And you'll see there that the language what we're looking for is I have decided to. I have decided to participate in this change. And in order to get someone through their desire, what you're looking for is to share with them, as we have on the screen, the with them. What's in it for me? And the WIFM is usually made up of personal motivators or organizational motivators. When someone is through their awareness and their desire, then it's on to knowledge. That's where they learn their how to. What skills do they need? We see this usually represented in training. Followed knowledge is follows by ability. So ability is I can perform. I can demonstrate that I have now the knowledge. And ability is where you align your go live. You need some level of ability to be able to go live. Reinforcement is that stickiness. It's the ability to continue or to sustain the change. And so I always say in class, it's not add ca, it's add car. You need the R. It's so important. So if ability is at go live, then it's like we've got to keep change management doesn't stop at go live. We've got to continue on to make sure that we are helping to with reinforcement. And about here, it's probably transitioned over to the business. And so we're helping the business to make sure that they are reinforcing the change. Really, really important. Often people will say, Josie, this is great, but we if you're working with an individual, we can get them through their ad car. But I'm working with 50, 100, 500, 10,000. If you're working in a financial institution, you could be putting 50, 60,000. We work with federal government, again, huge numbers through a change all at once. How can I attend to an ad car for that many people? Well, that's when we bring in the three-phase methodology. This is the ProSci three-phase methodology. And notice that in the middle of our methodology is the person who's going through change. It's all built around that person. So that's why you see the ad car in the middle. And then in the green, it starts with what we call a PCT, which is a ProSci change triangle that measures the health of a project. And then phase one is about preparing for the approach. And this is why I say it's important to start early, because we've got to help be able to define and articulate in a unified manner what is the definition of success. Be able to define and articulate which stakeholder groups are being impacted and how are they being impacted. And then define our overall approach of how we might implement the change management plans. And all of that needs to be done before any of the awareness campaigns are created, or even what we call an ADCAR blueprint is created before you've even gone out and communicated to folks. That work in the green needs to be done. And that's why I say bring in change as early as possible. And then in the blue, it's around managing the plans themselves. What I love about today's projects is that back in the day we might have created a great big plan and it kind of plunked on your desk and then you executed on it. But now we want to be agile in what we are doing, and I'm using small a agile to say that. In that you plan, you act, you track, and if something didn't land, then you also have to adapt. So it's this constant course correction. As long as we know where you need to be on ability and where you need to be from an outcomes perspective, that's what the plans do. And it's a very interactive, very live process of being able to plan, act, track, and adapt your plans. And moving on then to sustaining the outcomes. So a little something that we say is that at an individual level, at CAR, the individual reinforces. What an organizational level, you sustain the change, but you need to get people through reinforcement before the organization can sustain. That was process. Let's take a look at people. I'm going to give you a different way to think about people. And it is, how is people, your project team, connected? How are they connected to change management? There are different models. We refer to them as governance model. There are different models, but how is change management connected in? And is it the right way? What comes under your umbrella of change management? How is comms or training? Where are the change agents? How are they all fitted in with your change management? What is the connection point to your change practitioner? If you look over on Model D, this is the model where one person is acting as the project manager and the change manager. These models that you're seeing on the screen are just different examples, but what they are showing is the connection that change management has with project management. Are they interconnected? Are you in a situation where perhaps you have a change manager who is coaching but is not actually on the team but is coaching the project manager? Are you in a situation where you have a change manager who's coming from a center of excellence? We see this in a lot of large organizations. They're coming from a center of excellence and they are part of your team for a while and then they go back to their group. And then, of course, D actually happens to be the fastest growing model we see in that it is one lone brave person who is acting as both project manager and change manager. Bringing you back to the left side of the screen around the triangle, this is an example of the pro side change triangle, and up at the top, there's leadership and sponsorship. So again, coming back to that first slide that we saw that said that active sponsorship is the number one greatest contributor to project success, ensuring that there is a relationship between leadership, project management, and change management, or between the sponsor, project manager, and change manager. Those that they're connected and that they are connected by they have they're meeting together, they're discussing both the technical side and the people side. Let's go on to the last section, which is tools. So in tools, I'd like to leave you with one of my favorite tools, and it's the 10 aspects of change impact. And this is just another way to take a look at how stakeholder groups are impacted by your change. Is it a process? Is it their system is changing? Is it that there's a tool change? So system, an easy way to remember is anything that's hands-on keyboard. Tools, again, could be anything that's outside of the keyboard. So it could be a handheld device. But we're not so fussed about that. However you define system and tools is good for your project. Is the job role changing? The actual job description itself, is it changing? Are you adding a new role in? Critical behaviors, mindsets, and attitudes as we come around the dial. Is the reporting structure changing? Will the performance reviews, how they're conducted, are they changing? Compensation or location? These are the 10 aspects of change impact, and they tell a great story. So that once you determine which stakeholder groups are going to be impacted, now you can talk about how they're being impacted. And for right now, if you attend one of our certification classes, we will show you how to do it from a quantifiable method to be able to measure each one for a stakeholder group. But now let's just give you some language to be able to talk about these 10 aspects. And here you can apply your high, medium, low. But it brings more clarity to how much change is actually happening. When we look at these 10 aspects, they usually don't happen in a silo. So for example, it's not usually if there's a process change or a system change, we're pretty sure that there's going to be a mindset and critical behavior. And I think that often those two get overlooked. And those are the ones that we really need to focus on. What is the mindset change and what are the critical behaviors? And again, that's why you start change management early so that you can have these kinds of conversations. And, we put this under the umbrella of stakeholder impact assessment so that you can get a stakeholder impact assessment done. Because the more clarity you bring up front is the more that you can be clearer about how you're communicating out the change. And this is a great tool to use. Okay, what other tools are available? So from our research, we have found that, there it is. From our research, we have found that when we asked practitioners what tools do they use, Overwhelmingly, people are using a communications plan, a project plan, a training plan, some sort of work back schedule, a stakeholder impact assessment, as I just showed you before, some sort of internal impact analysis. They are being able to define the scope, gathering up lessons learned and using them on projects. They're doing risk analysis, and they are building out business cases and readiness assessments. These are just a short list of showing some of the things that we do in change management, but there is a lot of rigor in running change. Back in the day, it was this line across a Gantt chart that just said communications, but today it's more than that. It's a very structured, intentional way of going through change. It's worth the effort upfront to be able to do the analysis, ensure everyone who's giving key messages are on the same page, and then creating meaningful plans that address the ADKAR, an individual's ADKAR or a team's ADKAR as they're moving through change, because it's really about getting people through to their reinforcement so that the organization can sustain whatever change you are looking for. So that actually is it for me today. And if you are interested in any of our continuing that conversation, I really encourage you to go to prosci.com. We've got lots of great webinars, white papers, blogs on there, and they're all open for everyone to look at. Please feel free to do that. And thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much, Josy. Just a reminder to participants, if you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A panel and I can read them out for the speaker to answer. There's none at the moment, Josy, but we'll just give everyone a minute in case there's any questions. Okay, I don't see any here. So thank you so much.